I'm going to check where it's going out to. All right, I'll make sure I don't have any loop back. Yeah, it looks like it's live. Yeah, good, it's live. It's going out to, so we're live on YouTube, Twitch, DLive, Facebook. Stream's going out to all of them. So if our audio sounds good, let us know in the chat, and make sure I have the comment section up. Looks pretty cool. Looks like lots of folks here. Glad to have everyone here. All right. Charles, thanks for coming on the first Cardano Live. I appreciate it. And this is going to be a lot of fun. And you pulled up some links. We were talking right before the show here about some of the latest stuff going on in crypto. What'd you find there?
Oh, yeah, that was about a John Doe summons for a tax lawsuit. It looks like the IRS is getting very serious about all these crypto gains. Whenever people start making massive sums of money, especially if they've never made large sums of money before, they don't necessarily pay their taxes properly. So the IRS is reminding them that they have a very large tax bill that's coming, especially under this administration. They like their taxes. So there's a John Doe summons on the Coinbase side and on the Kraken side, and they're looking for anyone who has accounts over $20,000, and they're trying to match those names with the compliance profiles and the existing tax records they have and verify that people actually paid correctly. And if they don't, they're looking at a pretty big bill come May 17th.
You know, I'm glad you said that because it doesn't apply to me until next year, but I totally fall into that category. As of about November of last year, I started falling into that category, and I started using Kraken, and I used Kraken to cash out and pay off my house. Now I'm an honest guy and I pay my taxes, so obviously I'm going to figure it out and pay my taxes. But fortunately, I did it this year, and so I won't have to mess with that until next year's taxes. So that's a good heads up.
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting, though. The infrastructure bill is going to target corporate taxes, and so that definitely affects me, but they're not targeting personal taxes yet. But part of the Biden tax plan when he ran on was treating capital gains as ordinary income above a certain point. I think if you have more than $400,000 of revenue that you make, then the capital gains beyond that would be ordinary income at 39%. As opposed to 25%. So a lot of people who got windfalls in crypto could be getting a doubling of their taxes potentially, especially with the state deductions going away. So taxes are going up, man. It's going to be pretty harsh next year.
Oh, yeah. So I guess it seems like taxes are going up whether you claim it on as a capital gains side or claim it as income side. It's probably going to go up either way.
Yep.
Oh, man. Well, hey, I wanted to congratulate you on the successful launch of, first of all, Shelly last summer. Then we had Allegra, and then Mary, and all these are going on. I know we call them hard forks, but they're really Cardano protocol upgrades, adding more and more to it. And then you had that blockbuster Cardano 360 that came out last week. Oh, that was fantastic. I watched it once and a half, and then I watched the mini clips that David made, and that was fantastic. So if anybody hasn't seen the mini clip from David, check that out. It brings the Cardano 360 down to, it was about 8 minutes.
Yeah, we went from 3 hours to 7 minutes, like 14 seconds or something like that. That's some damn good compression on David's part.
Yes. And somehow he manages to speak rapid and continuous and still get the points across and hit the highlights. But then I watched that yesterday. Then I said, you know what? I want to see more detail on this again. And then so I started rewatching Cardano 360 again because I wanted more detail. And then I was watching more in what Grigor Rosu had done with the KEVM and all that cool stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And I really wanted to have an understanding, having this podcast moving forward. What I would like to do is have developers come on here and talk about the people who are already developing in Cardano and talk about their current developer experience and what their needs are going forward.
Right.
And get the scientists and engineers on here, as well as you're gonna have them on your channel as well. So there might be a little bit of overlap, but I'll try to avoid overlapping with the folks you have on your channel because it's huge.
There's 1,300 people in the Plutus Pioneers program, I think, and there's 5 major development companies we brought in just to beta test things as of May. So even if we're interviewing them at a rate of 1 a day, I don't think we'll ever overlap. There's plenty to go around. And actually, there's 20 projects that just got funded with Fund 3. be really cool to bring some of those on. And Fund 4 will probably fund, out of the 233 proposals, if these proportions hold, around 40. And every 6 to 8 weeks, we should see a scale up of that. So there's an endless supply of people in the Cardano ecosystem that need a platform to stand on.
That's what I noticed. And so not only the engineers, but also I've already got a few folks that I'm talking to on Project Catalyst. So I want to get as many people on Project Catalyst who can come on over to Cardano Live. Please come on the podcast. We would love to have you over here. Maria Carmo, Shweta, Dwayne Cameron. They've all been in tight comms with me so far with coming on the podcast in the next couple of weeks. I got developers like Andrew who's showing an interest in coming on. Because he has a lot of experience with Joy Manager and interfacing Joy Manager with the existing Cardano software, and then he can talk about his experiences, and that would like kind of invite developers from other ecosystems to say, hey, this is what we got going over on a Cardano. And then of course we got more stuff coming out over the coming months, including Alonzo coming up. And in the out years, or the out months and out years, Yella and KVM. And I think Grigori said that Yella, we're looking at 6 months out to have a basic Yella coming out on the street.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So it's a really, really super hard thing that what Roshi is doing. So we're doing 2 threads at the same time. So one is a theory and research thread where we're trying to figure out some stuff involving techniques like semantics-based compilation and improvements to the whole K model. Now, the more theory we do, the better we get at automated translation, which means that it's you don't have to write any code. It's just the machines figure out how to go from one language to another language, and everything just works. Now, the other thread's an engineering thread, so it's not doing papers and doing research. Rather, they're writing code, and specifically what they're doing is they're linking the Yella infrastructure to older infrastructure, the LLVM infrastructure. And the hypothesis is that if that's done correctly, you can take any language that compiles to LLVM and hypothetically run that on the Yella backend. Now, in practice, there's an issue of libraries. So the language will translate and compile, but the libraries and that infrastructure may not, and almost certainly will not, because there are certain things in the libraries which will only work on LLVM but aren't supported with Yella. That said, our strategy stage 2, after we get the initial infrastructure running on the engineering side, will be to build a blockchain-based library. So what happens is you segregate your code through some sort of templating, and your off-chain code, you use all your normal C++ libraries and your normal Java libraries or whatever language you're compiling to LLVM, and then your on-chain code, you don't use those libraries, you use instead the blockchain library, which has been custom tailored for it. And they are all one code base. It's just templated in. So maybe there's a special comment or something that you stick in your code as a template, and that's the blockchain code, and then the off-chain code is the normal C++ code or so forth. So this whole year is just lots of engineering experimentation with it, and I suspect that we'll converge to something next year that contains that unified model, kind of like how we do it with Plutus and Haskell, where your Plutus is your on-chain code, your Haskell or some other language is your off-chain code, and template Haskell wires the on-chain and off-chain together, and it works really well. Now, the advantage of this approach is that it has a low risk of failure because we're not doing anything crazy or revolutionary or theoretically hard, but the disadvantage is that it does require an enormous amount of software and maintenance and clever thinking and optimization and so forth. So I have to build a large team to basically do that. So the cost is in the millions, perhaps even the tens of millions of dollars to carry out that entire agenda. Now on the theory side, if we can get that working, if you write case semantics for a language, then SBC can hypothetically translate it into another language that's K-defined, in which case you write no code, no infrastructure. The infrastructure itself does all that work for you automatically. But that's theory, and there's still papers to write and research to do. So, version 1 is all about getting the mainstream languages working well, and then version 2 is about pivoting over to this new approach in a 3 to 5 year time horizon. And that new approach would give us universality. That's what we're looking for.
Okay, yeah, I like that description, because as I was watching with Grigori Rosu, I mean, they're looking at bringing in the C, C++, JavaScript, other languages that people are already familiar with, and that in the out years there would be hopefully developers would volunteer and step in to bring in the libraries that they need. But I think that's good to hear that it follows the same off-chain, on-chain model where if you can keep the libraries off-chain and then just the on-chain code sticks to the basic programming language without the libraries. That's the general idea. Did I copy that correctly?
Yeah, basically, you'll have a special purpose library for blockchain related things, and that'll be universal for the languages supported. So we'll make sure it has support for C and C++ and other languages. And then you use the normal language specific libraries for the off-chain code. And generally the off-chain code runs in different infrastructure. So that's going to run probably on Amazon or Rackspace or something, or Infura or whatever that happens to be. But you'll have a single code paradigm. So it's almost like your JavaScript for your front end. It uses fundamentally different stuff than your Node application on your back end, but you're using JS as your common language on both sides. It's just your libraries are different, your infrastructure is different.
Okay, so in the meantime, one of the other things that's being worked on is Lars. He's going to be training people on Plutus, and I think Marlo as well, but he's going to be training people on Plutus. We have some kind of type of Pioneer program coming up, yes?
Yeah. Yeah, so basically we're starting that Pioneer program in April. I think we're taking applications. I don't know the exact start date, but it's 10 weeks. And basically it's going to encompass the totality of the testnet and a little bit into the mainnet for Plutus. But the point is to take developers who are really curious and keen and want to be Plutus developers and teach them how to do that the proper way. And it's as much of an experiment for us as it is for them, because no one's ever written outside of our organization a Plutus application. So we're really learning a huge amount along the way. So this will improve our dev tools, our documentation, our libraries. It'll improve all these things, because people as they're programming will be like, well, why doesn't this work? And we say, well, that should. That's a problem. And we go and fix that. So a huge wave of devs will hit the testnet in May and June. The hardest month of my life and my company's life will be May, because that's when we're scheduled to turn on the Plutus testnet. And we have these professional dev companies, and each one of them is taking a large piece of work, like go build a DEX or go build a stablecoin, and they're going to go and do that, and they're going to do it in a very ruthless way. So they'll say, like, where's our documentation, where's this, and if there's deficiencies, we have to fix it to get that over the finish line. And then at the same time, with this huge group of people from the community who are coming in, who know just enough to be dangerous, so any deficiencies or problems we have, it's not going to work for them, and we're going to get this massive wave of, hey, help us out, let's fix this. But then the end result of that is going to be that we burn in Plutus, and we get a really good sense of what's working, what's not working, and we fix all of that before it goes to mainnet. The problem is that the minute this goes to mainnet and applications are deployed, you don't want to, if you make a mistake, it's hard to change that. Because if you fix it, you may break those applications and you lose immutability in that particular respect. And you may even lock user funds. So you have to have as much done as possible up front to make sure that you don't introduce a mistake. Like, for example, all of the protocol level stuff that we shouldn't have done that way with Byron, we still have to support that. We still have to support Byron addresses and all these other things. And, you know, the HFC mechanism makes that easy to do, but that's permanent infrastructure, and it's, you know, that's not ideal stuff, but yet we still have to support it because of those mistakes that were made. So we don't want to have that happen with Plutus, and that's why it's pivotal that as many people as possible test it, build on it, play around with it, so that what we think is true, and we're completely happy with that design. So I think between the professional development companies, the 5 that have entered, and the 1,000+ people with Plutus Pioneers for 2 months, we will get a really beautiful sample of things. Now, the other thing is, because there's so many people that are there, the amount of bugs that are going to be discovered will likely be very high. And what we don't want to happen is the feature teams and integration teams have to move over to bug fixing and slow down feature delivery and integration, because that'll push out the timeline for delivery of the product. So we've made some deals with some of our friends in the Haskell community to do surge resourcing. So they're going to come on and do nothing but bug fixing and work in parallel with the feature teams and the delivery teams and the integration teams, so that both of those teams can basically work at the same time, as opposed to a resource context shifting. So I think that'll help with making sure that we hit our targets and our timelines that we announced. And I think also it'll ensure that we have a much higher quality product that we launch with. But as I said, this is probably the busiest 3 months in our company's history, and May in particular is going to be hell, because there's so many people using something new, and that new thing was built in parallel 4 years with a different team. So no matter how good that team is, how good those tools are, how good that testing is, there's always something that's going to happen when you integrate those two things together. It's Boeing ran into this with the Dreamliner. You know, they had all these different pieces all over the world, and they put it all together, and they didn't quite fit right, and it caused some issues. But unfortunately, fortunately for Boeing, they had time. I don't, so I have to figure out how do I get all that working, and do that real time, so there's no market delays. And we feel very comfortable with the team, but it's like delicate surgery, and it's going to be exceedingly difficult for us.
Yeah, you know, it's good to hear that you have the experience to understand what you're facing over the coming months and the level of difficulty you're going to have, because you're going to deploy these dev nets out to developers, hundreds of people with various skill levels, banging away, writing code on that software. Hopefully they explore and test every area of the code. If you get enough people doing it, you're probably going to touch pretty much everything.
Yes.
Find those bugs, report them on GitHub.
Yeah.
And then...
And that's part of the Pioneer program, is that they're going to be doing that. And also having professional development companies that aren't my company is great, because some of these people are at the same level, and they don't have an emotional connection or an invented here idea or something. So they're going to be ruthless when they say, hey, this needs to be here. And there's no way for people to kind of be like, oh, well, we don't need that. It's like, no, we kind of do. So I feel very confident that the size of the beta test is right size for what we're trying to do. And, you know, we launched Shelly, we launched Mary, these other things. So we're pretty good at launching at this point. We're pretty good at getting these things done. And what I'm good at is just dialing it up. So we were at like 9, and now I've gone past 10. We've taken it to 11. And
it only goes to 10.
I know. We're spinal tapping this shit, man. It's going to be fun. But, you know, once we get through it, we're done. Peer-to-peer is there. We just hit D equals 0 a few days ago. And then we have full smart contracts. And at that point, it's just governance, and getting Genesis out. And then the other thing is gradually rolling out the sidechain model. So and we have some other amazing things that are hitting. We've been doing a light client research program for over 3 years, and it's called Project Mithril. We've never talked about it, but it looks like that's finally converging, and that's probably the paper is probably going to hit in May. So we'll have some media and discussion about that, but it's really cool because the way we designed Ouroboros and the way crypto's been moving, I think that we can actually have best-in-class light clients. And that's essential for sidechains, because you don't want to have a full chain of each of the sidechains. Rather, you just have a light view and bring these things in. And there's obviously Omega, Ouroboros Omega. That's a very aggressive agenda that we have to roll up 5 years of knowledge and research we've done, plus 5 years of knowledge and research the industry has done, to basically the perfect proof-of-stake protocol. So after Alonzo, the next major hard fork combinator event is going to be getting in Ouroboros Genesis, as well as anything cleanup. So there's going to be some stuff we screwed up on, always is, with Alonzo, and we'll clean that up with Genesis. And then after that, we're on to Cardano 2025 and decentralized governance and all these other things. The Hydra team is also working very hard right now. In fact, they're starting weekly prototyping. They've had 4 or 5 meetings so far with the scientists. We finally have engineers writing Hydra code. And we have probably another Hydra paper that's going to hit here this year. There's probably 4 papers total that have to be done to fully flesh out the whole Hydra ecosystem. And our hope is to get at least 2. We already have 1. Get 2 more of those papers done. And then what we'll probably do is borrow for version 1 an off-the-shelf routing protocol. And then version 2 do something bespoke. And Hydra is how we bring in microtransactions. It's going to be really useful for cross-chain communication. And it's also useful for roll-ups and bulk computation. So that's a big scalability part of the solution. That plus Ouroboros Omega together, I think, will be best in class, even including F2 in the conversation.
Okay, and you're targeting around 2025. And I think it's important for people to understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but these research papers, they're living documents. They're eligible for revision. So as new papers come out and affects the previous papers and they get reviewed again, they can be updated while in run, right? And these papers, and another thing I'd like to point out is they're coming to life on mainnet. They're live on mainnet. A lot of times there was talk about Cardano had a lot of white papers, but there's a lot of that research is running right now on the mainnet in Shelly, and that's pretty amazing stuff right there. And then we got go all the way to Ouroboros Omega, and I don't think I've even seen that paper yet.
It's not out yet. We're
Okay.
still working on the paper. And actually, what I've been doing is I'm pulling a LeBron James with Omega. We're just, when he went to the Miami Heat and he just bought up every major player and said, I want to win a championship. So this is what we're going to do. So I've been going to all these schools, just like buying out professors' contracts and saying, you're not going to teach for a year. You're just going to work on Omega. It's going to be great. So I think we got Alex Russell full time now from University of Connecticut. And there's a few others we haven't announced yet that we're adding to the existing research team. And that team is good. Now, the other thing I'm trying to do is attach a prototyping team with each paper team. Because if you look at our latency for paper to market, Genesis came out in 2018. We're probably going to bring that out later this year, maybe September or maybe October. We're trying to figure that out. Well, that's too long to have that kind of latency from when the paper is peer reviewed and published to when the paper is brought into production. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but I want to do prototyping in parallel with paper development so that when the paper hits, there's already a working prototype for it, and all of our discussions are about integration at that point. And our time to market is in 3 to 6 months instead of 3 years for a paper being delivered. So that's another major objective this year. And we've brought on specialized people that's all they do and that's all that they think about. We're hiring almost 200 people this year for IO Global. Now, not all of it's Cardano, but we're like probably 100 are. So we're really scaling up with or without the Cardano 2025 contract. We have a bone. We're like a dog with a bone, and we know how to win. And I want to, and the community wants to. So I say, fuck it, let's go and do it. So we're pushing, as you like to say, going for number one. I see no reason why we couldn't get there, but we have to really be disciplined and focused, and we have to keep the momentum, and we have to keep refining. So for example, the concept of bringing QA people in to do nothing but bug fixing to run in parallel with feature delivery. Normally, we would have just rotated resources back and forth and made it the concern of the delivery team. The fact that we're doing that parallel is the first time we've really done that. But if that's right and that hypothesis is right, we pull that off, we could shave a month off of delivery. So there's hundreds of little optimizations that I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to put in with our CTO. Roman is doing a phenomenal job. And others to specifically along those lines, so we can continue accelerating delivery and we can continue bringing more and more to market. We've actually already, for example, begun looking at Daedalus 2. So we have Daedalus. We've started planning Daedalus 2 and making that a mobile first and browser first experience in addition to a full node. So basically, it runs beautiful in a light mode. It runs beautiful in a full mode, and that'll be part of the Cardano 2025 agenda that we propose. So we're very excited about these things.
Yeah, you got me excited. Hearing another version of Daedalus, and I just love the work on Daedalus. That's one of my favorite. That's my favorite desktop wallet, and then Yoroi is my favorite mobile wallet. So, it's also good to hear you're doing so much effort in parallel coming up here in the next couple of months. It could get chaotic. Fortunately, most of the people in the Cardano community at this point in time, we've learned to be patient because patience works. Patience works. We've seen it in the code. We see it with a very well-running mainnet network with Shelley, decentralized. Everything has been going as planned. And I think what happened is what I noticed since last July is people's confidence levels seem to have built. Now, I can't speak for everyone. I can only speak for myself. But I feel my confidence level going up and up and up, and my ability to be patient is getting better and better. And then you guys are getting more work done in parallel. So I think the end user experience is just going to be so much better in the coming years. And we'll see. It's just, but I got to give you kudos for that too, Charles, is the rollouts over the past year has been a real confidence builder.
Well, what's nice is that these third generation attempts really show you how difficult these things are. It's not hard to build a Bitcoin-like replicated system. Okay, much harder when you shard, much harder when you want to build a distributed system or actually do the things that people talk about when they talk about scalability and so forth. So F2 is like, oh, it's so easy. It's coming out tomorrow, next month, and then it doesn't. And it doesn't, and it doesn't. And then people start asking why, and they start realizing, oh, well, it turns out these protocols are exponentially more complicated. And what we did is we did all the work up front, and so it's more of an engineering nuisance than a theoretical nuisance, and that's great because it just means become better engineers, hire better engineers, build better processes, and you can always get that right over time. So the next 5 years are going to be just beautiful because we know what research we need to do. We know what people we need to talk to. We know basically what papers we need to write. And we know they can be written. And we know kind of where to look on how to do that stuff. So now that it's starting to compress from a scientific and a theoretical problem to an applied engineering problem, that gives me a lot of faith and hope. The other thing is we're starting to commercialize. We have metadata. If you look at Cardano Wall, people put all kinds of crazy things on the chain. We have user-driven assets. I think we're well over 10,000 issued. And people are already starting to do NFTs. People are already starting to do things. With Plutus Pioneers coming, like within 60 days, there should be a test net running if we keep this velocity. That means you're going to see tons of dApps and DeFi and other things on Cardano. And thousands of projects running around doing interesting things. And those aren't me. Those are the community. So I think that patience metric, you can't have unlimited patience. You have to be rewarded. At some point, faith has to be honored. We're starting to see that. And what's nice is people realize there's depth. All those people keep attacking us. They say it's a ghost chain. It used to be just a wallet and then just a white paper. Now it's a ghost chain, right? Even though we carry as much value as Ethereum or Bitcoin does when you look at the value metrics, and our fees are substantially less. So that will just dissolve away. And all these critics, what are they going to say? I mean, we're fully decentralized for block production now. All the rest of the infrastructure will be fully decentralized before the end of Q2. And then in the governance, when all those components turn on, we'll have the largest blockchain-based government in the world with probably well over 100,000 active participants. Then what do they say? And every time we have a problem, we know how to resolve that problem. We have a government to resolve that problem, funding to resolve that problem, and we'll rapidly converge to an answer. Bitcoin is in anarchistic chaos, and Ethereum is a cult of personality around a leader who may or may not be able to keep pushing the ecosystem against its own economic incentives. Meanwhile, we're just pushing along with this big decentralized brain and this giant decentralized community and tons of developers and a beautiful ecosystem. So I like it. It didn't happen today. We invested in the goddamn thing for 6 years, and we got brutally criticized for 6 fucking years every day by all these people floating around saying how bad we are. We're a scam, we're criminals, we're scam. There's a lot of fatigue, I think. And one thing I'll tell the community is don't succumb to your baser instincts. I do sometimes, and I always regret it. It's amazing that people can mock 10 people in my hometown, a supermarket I used to go to, getting murdered. But when I tell them to go fuck themselves, the news story is not them mocking 10 people getting murdered. It's me reacting to them. It's amazing to me that this is the society that we live in. So don't engage, don't react. Just turn the other cheek, keep pushing through, and quality will show itself in time, and people will eventually come on board.
Yeah, keep pushing forward. And, we see that through the quiet professionals working on Project Catalyst. There's so many funded proposals now, and we're just getting started on Project Catalyst. People working hard, developing their products, people taking a risk, they're putting themselves out there, and they're the quiet professionals who are getting the work done in a completely decentralized environment on the largest DAO in the world. So another huge win there. Now, there's 2 more things I was going to touch on before we wrap up for the day, because I didn't know how much more commitments you had this afternoon on a nice, warm, sunny Friday afternoon. And I was going to ask you about you mentioned with the IRS and the FBI are starting to ask about crypto. Then I'll tell people a little bit about this podcast moving forward, and then we can wrap it up. Does that sound good?
Sure.
All right. So at the end of the D=0 party a few days ago, we were just having a candid discussion, and you had mentioned with the FBI and the IRS, they're starting to ask about crypto. Can you tell the viewers here a little bit more about that story, how the baseline, and then what you know?
Well, in general, regulators are definitely taking crypto more seriously. And we designed Cardano preempting a lot of the things we thought were going to happen. And they're coming true. Like, for example, the travel rule with the FATF. I think over the next 3 to 5 years, there's going to be a strong desire to attach identity to transactions and wallets. Now, if you do this in a naive way, it's the end game for privacy. Privacy's dead. Basically, anybody in the world will know what Rick owns, what Rick's bought, and so forth. That's a horrible situation. But I think that the regulators are open to doing it in a much more discreet way, where encrypted DIDs and pseudonymous DIDs that sign transactions will basically be present, and only a set group of people can de-anonymize. In some cases, you have to self-de-anonymize in the event of auditing. So, for example, with taxes, you have to keep a lot of records. If you write stuff off, if you ever get audited, you have to show those. But in general, they are in your possession otherwise. So the way we built Prism and the way we built Cardano with the metadata standard and DID embedding and these types of things, it future-proofs us in many ways for these things, and also allows us to talk about compliant dApps and compliant DeFi. So you look at Uniswap or something like that. So what you can do is say everything that enters the DEX is signed money or authenticated wallets, but there's no central authority that controls that. It can be any KYC entity, but there's some way of unwinding it if there was an investigation to actually figure out who did what where. So if you take a position, well, that's not necessary to think how to do that, I think we're going to see a huge crackdown on DeFi in the next year or 2 years by the relevant regulatory bodies, because first, the size is so large, and second, they're basically replicating highly regulated entities like exchanges without any regulation whatsoever. So they're going to want to come in and take a look at that. Now, my belief is always make it optional. So it's not built into the protocol and compulsory so that you have to do it, but you, the user, have the freedom to do so. And then basically you can decide if you want to be in compliance or not in compliance and so forth. It's my job as the protocol builder to provide resources and capabilities. So that's the generic conversation. Now, going into the specific, I have noticed, and this is obvious, anytime there's large windfalls, tax authorities, regulatory bodies, they tend to come in and say, okay, who made millions of dollars is not paying their taxes. They always do that. They did it in the 90s and the dot-com boom. They did it in 2017 and 2018 after the first crypto wave, and they're doing it again now, because literally you have people who, because of yield farming and DeFi stuff and anything, they made a 50x. I mean, just look at Cardano. If you bought ADA in March of 2020, I think we were at 2 cents. Let's say you sold when they did the run up to $1.40, you got a 70x for every dollar that you put in. So even a modest investment could have turned into hundreds of thousands of dollars, and a lot of those people probably didn't fully report their income or their revenue. So unfortunately, the IRS is getting very aggressive about this, and what they're doing is starting to do John Doe summons and subpoenas for exchanges, and they're unraveling things. And the IRS has very sophisticated analytics tools. They've purchased them. So like Chainalysis is a partner, and all these other guys are partners, and they sell those platforms which support most modern cryptocurrencies to these tax authorities. So a lot of people are going to get very large tax bills or audit notices here from their trading activity in 2020 or 2021. It's a fact of life. So pay your taxes if you want to stay out of jail or, not go broke. But more broadly, the FBI is also looking at cryptocurrencies because they're creating geopolitical problems. U.S. has this powerful toolkit called sanctions, and they freeze money for nation states. And what's happened is certain nation states like Iran, North Korea, and others are starting to use crypto to evade sanctions. For example, a lot of the exchange thefts that we saw in Asia were national thefts. They were done by North Korean hackers, because the North Korean government is trying to accumulate Bitcoin because they can use Bitcoin to actually purchase things, and that evades a lot of the aggressive sanctions that exist. And actually, we're starting to see a lot of cryptocurrency mining in countries like Iran. Now, wherever your politics sit, you do understand there's a great book called Treasury's War from Juan Surratt, and it talks about how this is part of prosecuting U.S. foreign policy. So the fact that crypto has gotten to a multi-trillion-dollar ecosystem means that nation states can now use it and have enough liquidity and enough channels to be able to use this to evade sanctions. So the FBI is looking into this. Treasury through OFAC is looking into this as well, and we've now gotten to that point. And there are big conversations with central banks about what to do. It's a carrot and a stick. So I think the carrot side is central bank issued digital currencies. So there's a lot of discussion about a digital euro and a digital, People's Bank of China yuan, and, a digital dollar and so forth. And I believe we will start seeing central bank issued digital currencies within the next few years, because they solve so many problems. And that's the carrot side. The stick side is we'll probably see more aggressive regulations, especially on information gathering, so KYC and AML. And anybody who's building something, be advised that that's probably going to be something that comes your way. And unfortunately, a lot of the laws for these things are not fines. They're criminal. FinCEN violations, for example, are felonies. They're very serious. And I have a friend here in Colorado who he was just trading Bitcoin on local Bitcoins, and they got him with a money service business violation, and they put him in jail for a few years. And he's a felon now just for selling Bitcoin for cash for people on local Bitcoins. It was very tough for him. So this kind of stuff does happen. And just because you're building DeFi and other things, that doesn't magically absolve you from liability, responsibility, or regulatory capture. There's going to be more and more and more of that over the next few years. And the cryptocurrencies and ecosystems that don't make provisions for that will lose liquidity, and the builders on those ecosystems will find themselves in a lot of regulatory trouble. And unfortunately, we got a lot of young people, Rick. I remember, what's his name, from Ethereum, Virgil Griffiths. Virgil, I'd run into him at the conferences all the time, and I remember like it was yesterday. He told me, hey, I'm going to North Korea. And I was like, aren't you a U.S. citizen? It's like, yeah, it'll be fun. I said, well, at least did you talk to the State Department? He said, yeah, I did, but they said not to go. And I was like, so why are you going? It's like, oh, I'm going to go. So he goes, and then as soon as he gets back to America, the FBI interviews him, said, so tell us about your trip to North Korea. And he got arrested, and now there's a whole trial, and he might end up going to jail for a few years for violating sanctions. So they just have this mentality, like just because it's open source software, it's an open ecosystem, legacy rules don't apply, and unfortunately they do. And seldom do you get away with things for ignorance or get away with things because you think that you're like young and invincible and so forth. So unfortunately, this wave of DeFi and the things that are happening right now, I think there's going to be a DeFi winter probably in the next year or two, and that will be precipitated by a large group of investigations and fines and criminal charges, just like ICO mania had that issue in 2017, and then 2018, 2019 we had crypto winter. But the infrastructure is here to stay, looks good. So I think the infrastructure coins like the Algorand's, the Tezoses, the Cardanos, and F2s and so forth, we're good to go. We still have questions about regulatory clarity for proof of stake, but that's our big challenge. And the foundation's going to do their best to try to create clarity, and we'll work with the industry to do our best to try to create clarity there. But it's going to be a wild ride the next few years. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, regulators coming in is a double-edged sword. There's the benefit of you have a better, safer environment, but then there's also, okay, make sure you pay your taxes, make sure you comply with the laws. Although cryptocurrency in the past 10 years has been a little bit more on the wild, wild west side. People like, oh, it's decentralized, there's no rules that apply. But they do, and they do. And that reminded me of something, Charles. There was you did an interview with Max Kaiser, I think it was about 5 years ago. And I saw it maybe a year ago. I can't remember the exact context. You're still working with Ethereum. I think it was about 5 years ago. And Max, his general point at the beginning of the interview was, look, Bitcoin, the law is the protocol. If the law isn't the protocol, the law isn't there. And you gave him pushback. You didn't follow just, toe the party line. Oh, yeah, Bitcoin is wild, wild west and we can do whatever we want. You actually corrected Max, or at least gave your inputs and said, no, actually, there is regulation on Bitcoin because it has to go through the exchanges, and there's some regulation and governance on the exchanges, and kind of like let them back to closer to reality than just wild, wild west. You can do whatever you want, right? Because that's how most people acquire their Bitcoin. The reason the price is going up is because they can go to an exchange and get the Bitcoin. Again, the double-edged sword. You can get it off an exchange. It makes it easier to acquire, so you don't have to run massive mining equipment. But at the same time, you got to give up your KYC and you got to pay your taxes.
Yeah, and I can't really control that. It's like, well, go be a rebel. It's like, oh, okay, so when I get arrested and I get thrown in jail, will you guys be there to pay my legal fees and bail me out and these types of things? And are you going to vote for people who will change the law? I mean, every year I vote for the Libertarian candidate, vote for Ron Paul and so forth. I vote for the Libertarian legislatures. I fight for this type of policy. But you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't put a guy like Biden in the White House or a person like Trump in the White House and then just magically expect that this libertarian utopia is going to occur. And you can't believe that cryptocurrencies magically are going to change the entire world. Because right now, let's be honest here, most people in our industry are looking at these as speculative assets, not as revolutionary assets. I look at them as revolutionary assets, and I put my money where my mouth is. I go to Ethiopia. I go all throughout Africa. It's very difficult work, and every step forward, you sometimes have 2 steps back. Some incident happens or something like that, and you have to undo a whole bunch of things and then start over and so forth. And we're not making huge amounts of money being in these jurisdictions. For example, we don't sell ADA in these jurisdictions. We're selling the infrastructure and the platform because we're playing a long game, and the laws there will eventually align with a much better self-sovereign viewpoint. But I can't do anything about the United States, and this is a country that if you piss it off, like black helicopters show up in the middle of the night and shoot you in the face, as Osama bin Laden realized. Okay, the U.S. is a very powerful country. The European Union collectively is very powerful. China is very powerful. They have camps in Western China, and they have social credit and so forth. So, you can't live in this bizarre reality where you're going to get crazy rich off of crypto, but you'll never pay taxes. It's a libertarian utopia. Well, when you go and buy that Lambo or that private jet or that other thing, don't you think the government's going to figure that out? So you can just leave your money in crypto forever, but then if businesses are accepting it, aren't they going to get regulated for those commercial transactions? So you're basically proposing a huge underground criminal economy. But it's a criminal economy for good stuff, but what about when the bad stuff happens in that economy? How do you regulate that? Oh, no, don't worry. There won't be assassination markets and child porn and drug trafficking and arms dealing and so forth. That won't happen, except for the times it does. But we'll somehow say no to those guys. But then for me and my access to that market, everything will be great. It's not real. It's a fantasy. And the point of thinking about change is you do it iteratively, and you do it with economic incentives. You create incentives for the good things, and you disincentivize the bad things. And then over time, you put in systems that can't be corrupt and have to be transparent and have to actually, everybody plays by the same rules. And then through the ballot box, you gradually elect politicians who are okay with that, not authoritarians that want to control everything. This whole last year, I've been talking about coronavirus, and this is a great litmus test for it. I have so many people in the cryptocurrency space who attack me for being anti-lockdown and say, I just want to murder grandmother or something like that. And I say, okay, guys, well, think about what you're advocating here, wearing a mask and being in lockdown and all these other things. The developing world is not getting vaccinated. That means every year the virus is going to mutate in India and Africa and South America and Eastern Europe and in Southeast Asia and so forth and come back. A new strain will come, and that new strain resets the clock. No one's vaccinated against it. So you're advocating we all wear a mask until we have herd immunity, but then when the new strain comes, there's no herd immunity, so we all have to put a mask on again, and we all have to go back in lockdowns and wait another year for new vaccines. And because no one's vaccinating the developing world, it happens again and again and again and again. At what point do we say we can't do that or demand policy and goalposts and other such things? And all the politicians in power are authoritarians, whether they're Republican or they're Democrats. Most of them are authoritarians who say, we're okay with the government having total control over your freedom of movement, your health, and what things you put into your body, and businesses, basically telling businesses how to operate, who they can do business with, and so forth. That's where we're at. You get a vaccine, you're completely immune. Looking at the Israeli data, you still have to wear a mask. I don't understand. You can't spread it because we have data from Israel showing you can't spread it. You're totally immune, but you still have to wear a mask. All the old people in the United States, the 70 over, we have like 70, 80% vaccination rates. So all the people who are going to die from this are now immune, but you still have to wear a mask. You still have to behave in a lockdown culture. So if you're willing to say that that's cool and great and trust the science, like NBA, they're allowed to go and play with each other, touch the same ball, be in each other's faces. But then when they go to the sidelines, they have to put masks on. I mean, fucking come on. There's no science behind that. But then at the same time, we're going to live in a libertarian utopia for our cryptocurrencies, and magically that's going to be regulated and not be touched. The people who do the mask stuff are going to apply a mask stuff and safety for your own good to crypto. If you don't like that, you have to change the entire political reality, or you have to leave the jurisdiction and go into jurisdictions that don't have that viewpoint. It's just that simple.
Yeah. At the current rate, it's like we're going to be wearing masks forever unless people give pushback. And Charles, the interesting thing, I saw that debate play out on Twitter with your views on masks. And so I did a Twitter poll, and the results were rather disheartening because I asked when do the masks come off? Right. Basic question. And then the options were when the government lets us, when people push back, when people make a lot of noise. And the winning response was when the government lets us. And I'm thinking, okay, I guess something's not making sense here. Something's not clicking. The government will never let you. You have to push back. You have to make your voice heard. You have to let it be known and say, hey, get rid of these masks, because then the politicians might respond, but it won't happen until after people push back and say, this has to end. This is crazy. There's got to be a better way to do it. Or we're going to be using hand sanitizer. I mean, invest in hand sanitizer, I guess, in mask companies.
And that's just a great example, though, of how these laws work and how these regulations work. There is no difference in my mind between the authoritarianism that compels the current policy we have for Corona versus the financial regulation authoritarianism. I'm old enough to remember the bit license in Ben Losky over in New York City. He reached out to all us crypto guys. He was calling people saying, what should I do for bit license? And the industry as a whole told him what to do. And he just threw it all in the trash can and did the exact opposite and devastated the entire New York cryptocurrency community. Then he retires, and then he goes in the private sector and makes $600 an hour advising people how to do bit license. And he gets to be on the board of Ripple. And then this is the great irony. He gets to be on the board of Ripple. The SEC still hits Ripple for regulatory problems. This is how fucked up everything is in financial regulation. And here's the problem. We are printing too much money. There are so much debt, and there's so much money printing and negative interest rates and so forth. We live geopolitically, our national security is at risk. If our interest rates go up 2%, our country goes bankrupt at this point. So we have to keep them low. And anybody who challenges the supremacy of the dollar is now actually, it's like as good as declaring war on the United States. So our monetary policy is horrible. Our fiscal policy is horrible. And financial regulation is a tool for control. The same type of authoritarianism that has you wear a mask, even when it makes no logical or scientific sense, is the very same authoritarianism that is going to now control your entire money. And I see what's happening in China. I see the technology in China with social credit and the reputation controls and the Sharp Eyes program and so forth. And I see the very same thought processes working their way gradually into Europe and working their way into the United States. They're right now beta testing augmented reality glasses in China that show you real time the social credit score of a person. Because the way it works there is if you interact with people with low social credit scores, your social credit score goes down. So the minute that everybody can see it, everybody's going to be walking around like a Black Mirror episode and say, this person over there, I can't talk to him because he's got a bad credit score. So you've created an untouchable caste in your society. And that's going to happen in America in 10 or 20 years if we continue to allow these things politically to occur and this authoritarianism to occur. It'll happen gradually and subtly, and usually we're here for your safety or for your own good or whatever have you. And once it's there, you can't get rid of it.
And if anyone hasn't seen the Black Mirror episodes, check out the Black Mirror episodes. There's one Charles specifically is talking about. I'll see if I can find it and put it in the description down below. But what Black Mirror does is they take what are people currently doing, and they take that to the extreme, and then they make a movie on that. It's really cool. Well, some of them are really good, some of them not so much. But I know which one you're talking about with the social media where people have augmented reality built into their eyes, and it blots out other people. It marks them as red, or it grays them out and stuff like that. But so they're experimenting with this kind of stuff with augmented reality goggles in China, and it's crazy stuff. And it could happen if people let it. Those are the key things. That's something that I will touch on this podcast. I'm not afraid to touch on politics. And I noticed some of the things you said earlier, Charles. I first heard from Ron Paul in about 2004, 2006 timeframe about sound monetary policy and printing too much money. Here we are 16, 17, 18 years later, still doing the same thing. You know, 6 trillion printed last year, 1.9 trillion printed in the last couple of months.
When
Yeah,
Bill
so
Clinton left
people can't.
office,
Oh, sorry,
we
go
had
ahead.
when Bill Clinton left office, we had a surplus and a $4.5 trillion national debt. It was going down. And today, our national debt's well over $20 trillion, and we printed more than the entire tax revenue of the United States last year. We're told by the Federal Reserve that that has no effect on inflation. The price of lumber has doubled. The price of raw materials, everything is up 50%, 60%. We're saying it has no effect on monetary policy at all. So let me get this straight. Why do I pay taxes then? If you're telling me you can print trillions of dollars every year and it doesn't do anything to our currency, why do we even pay taxes? What's the point?
Yep.
You know?
That's something I learned from Ron Paul in 2006 is inflating the money supply has the exact same effect as raising taxes. You know, the effects are identical. It's just that when you print more money, the people who touch that money first have the greatest benefit, and the people who get that money last get the least benefit. They actually
Which
suffer.
are the poor people.
Yeah.
Which are the poor people. And they always say, hey, we're printing all this money to help all these poor people. We're going to give you your stimulus check. And I said, oh, okay, great. So when the price of everything goes up 30%, 40%, are their wages going to go up 30%, 40%? Can you do that? No. Oh, okay. So you give them $1,200, but then you make their money worth 30% less. So you've actually reduced their salary by 30%, which is more than $1,200. What are you doing? It's crazy. This is why Bitcoin is at $1 trillion. This is why our ecosystem has grown so much. It is a contrarian view on the world. The problem is that it's gotten to a point where it's now a threat to the world order, and it's a threat to the monetary policy of large nations. So if we do nothing, they're going to capture our entire industry and regulate it to a point where it's no longer a threat. The only way you can avoid that is through the ballot box and also onboarding developing nations and getting hundreds of millions of people into the unregulated space. And then that economy collectively is more powerful than the regulated economy. And then economic incentives will cause corporations to lobby to do business with the unregulated side. So this is a crossroads for our industry right now.
It is. And, you know, I would like to encourage people, before we wrap up here, I would like to encourage people to write your legislators, and I'll give you some examples. Like when Hester Pierce put out a paper for review. I'm remiss, I did not provide feedback. She put out a paper for review from the SEC. She is an SEC commissioner. She asked for feedback. Then she tweeted about 4 or 5 weeks later. She said, I didn't get a lot of feedback on this paper. Give them your feedback. That's what each and every person can do. Provide some of that feedback to that legislator. Wyoming now has Senator Cynthia, who's a crypto friendly, right? Yeah. Cynthia Lummis, right? Who's and you know, voting only occurs every couple of years, but there's little things that you can do along the way simply by writing your legislators and participating in the political process. Because I know a lot of people on social media, they want to avoid politics, but on Cardano Live here, I'll be okay with talking about politics and getting different perspectives from different people and getting all these different points of view. That's going to be perfectly fine, because if you're trying to replace the dollar or replace the yen or the euro, or not replace it, but you're trying to work alongside it, and the politicians feel threatened, their power feels threatened, they're going to push back, or they're going to try to find ways, you know, to mitigate it, right? And the best way to do, I think not the best way, but some things that you can do are the little things where provide your inputs. Let them know what you think. You know, get rid of masks, enjoy cryptocurrency, stuff like that. Tax me normally, right? Don't tax me so hard. Tax me normal. Treat it as, you know, regular income under a certain number, something like that, right? So that requires people's inputs.
Why don't we just have a constitutional amendment that fixes the tax rates permanently? No deductions, no nothing, and then we never have a tax fight again. And we tell the government it has to live within its means. Pass a balanced budget amendment, say unless you have a declaration of war, you can't spend more than you take in. It's like I run a business. If I spend more than I take in, we go out of business. It's pretty much that simple. Why does the government have this ability to have unlimited money printing capabilities? And somehow, it's because there's always something is important. If you don't spend it on X, you want this person to die. You want this frog to go extinct. You want this to happen. Yeah, and there's plenty of things I can do and help my community. This area that my office is in, it got hit very hard by the recession brought on by COVID. All the restaurants in this area went out of business. I'd love to go and buy that building over there and put the diner back in. I used to eat breakfast over there. Can't eat breakfast over there again. Yeah, obviously, I'm not going to do that. It makes no sense. It's not my business. I don't know how to run a restaurant. Okay, so I have to live within my means. Why the hell does my government not live within its means? And then they make it my problem, and they make the taxes go up, and they attack us. And then if we have offshore business where we're making money offshore, they tax me as if I'm doing the business right here in Colorado, even though they had nothing to do for it. There was nothing connected to that. All the employees and the business and the commercial activity is in Singapore or somewhere else. I'm using their infrastructure, their educated people, their employees, but somehow it's now, because a U.S. citizen, it happens to be UBO, a U.S. concern. It's so fucked up, this whole tax regime that we have and what's going on. Meanwhile, Amazon pays no taxes. Microsoft washes its money through Puerto Rico and other places and reduces their tax burden to like 3%, 2%. And they're the largest donors to Elizabeth Warren and Biden and all these other people who are crying about how they're going to kill these corporations and tax these corporations and so forth. It's a rigged game, and we're losing every day about this. And that's, again, why I think crypto has become so powerful. And crypto is political. You know, whenever I talk about this stuff, they say, why are we talking about politics? Why are we talking about politics? And guys, the only reason our whole industry exists is because of political failures. No one wakes up and goes and buys magic internet money created by a weird mining process over the internet with no issuer behind it, no guarantee or promise behind it, because they have so much faith, love, trust, and credibility in the US dollar. The reason they're doing that is because they're trying to opt out of the system that we have today, and none of us feel like the system can change.
Yeah.
We elected Obama, we gave him a supermajority. Who from Wall Street went to jail? No one. What happened with Occupy Wall Street? Nothing. We elect Trump, a reality TV star, so politically divorced from anything. We say, my God, this guy's the ultimate outsider. He's never done anything in the government, ever. He wasn't even in the military. And nothing changed. Nothing happened. Now we bring in Biden, and they're basically going back to the swamp. He's the swampiest of swamp people. He's been in the swamp for 50 years. So what's going to change with that? Nothing is going to change with that. It's going to be more of the same. They already spent $1.9 trillion. They got another $3 trillion on the way, and he hasn't even been in office for 100 days.
You want an expert at navigating the swamp, hire a swamp creature.
Yeah, exactly.
Elect
He's
your
got
swamp
the fan
creatures.
boat and everything. There's Kermit the Frog there playing a banjo. It's he's as swampy as they get.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to see you run in 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the Republican Party in Wyoming wants me to run for governor there. I said, no way, no how. You know, that's the other. I did a speech at a political convention in Cheyenne, and I said, you know, here's what happens when you run for office. Your day you're born, today. Everything that happens there, some guys go and they put a timeline, and then they go and they run scenarios. Can we make you a sexist? Can we make you a gay-hating person? Can we make you a religious zealot? Can we make you this? Can we make you an extremist? Whatever you've done. It's not about what you are. It's about what can we manufacture as a narrative. So that's what you get if you run for office. So either you're a clean skin where you have so sanitized your life, or you're deeply compromised, and so people have leverage against you. Like with Biden, for example, there's all these pictures of him touching children, but no one ever talks about that. Why? Because he represents the interests that control media. Or you don't care, like Trump, in which case, you know, nothing sticks to the guy because he's just so contaminated that there's no other person in my lifetime that will ever be elected president that can have an affair with a porn star and pay her off, and people are like, whatever. I mean, it's like, just like, think about that. If that happened during the Bush administration or the Clinton administration, Clinton with Lewinsky was like 2 years of our lives. This is 10 times worse than Lewinsky, and it's Tuesday in the Trump administration. So those are your three options with our current political system. So I think the only way to change the political system is through a constitutional convention at this point. Bring the states together, rewrite the U.S. Constitution. You just need 2/3 of the states to do it. And do a balanced budget amendment, taxes, change the way we vote for president, change the way we vote for Congress and Senate, and rein in the fourth branch of government, the bureaucracy. And that doesn't involve running for office. That's a meta thing, that the way the Constitution has been constructed, the way the federal government is constructed, it cannot be changed. Even if you want to change it, you come in, you can't, because the bureaucracy prevents you from doing it, and all the organs get too much money with the system running the way that it does.
Wow, you know so much. You've learned so much in your lifetime in such a short period of time, and somehow you've figured out how to apply it as well. Charles, I'm always impressed with your knowledge of everything in the world. You've gotten around. Well, I tell you what, Charles, what I'll do is I'll let you go for this afternoon. Thanks for coming on. I'm going to just tell people about this podcast going forward. Thanks for all your views, and thanks for touching on the politics. It's hard. It's hard for people to do that, but it is necessary. So I will be touching on that on this podcast. And also, I'll be talking with developers who would like to come on, Project Catalyst proposals that fall into all kinds of different categories, engineers from IOG, Emergo, staff from the Cardano Foundation, anyone who would like to come on, community members who are working and moving things forward for Cardano, promoting Cardano, helping Cardano. And, it's not a shill fest. I have a different definition of shill. I actually use the Wikipedia definition, but it's how do we educate people? How do we get people to know more about Cardano? It's a giant ocean out there on YouTube. This podcast right now is streaming on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and D Live at the same time. I almost got up on Odyssey. I'll do a post upload to Odyssey, which is LBRY. So if you're an LBRY user, you'll see the upload over on Odyssey. On my next live stream might go out on Odyssey if I have that feature enabled by the next time we do a stream, because I wanted to make sure we reach our audiences. There isn't a huge audience on Twitch, but I figured if people want to take a break from video games on Twitch, they can pause and check out some information on cryptocurrencies. And don't be afraid to explore new territory. And if you think you would like to come on Cardano Live, please let me know. Email me. I'll get the email link down below. Leave messages down in the comment sections down below. I'm going to go through all the comments and see if there's recommendations for people to come on. I'm also going to invite people from other cryptocurrency ecosystems to come on Cardano Live and tell us about their experiences. People from Ethereum, EOS, Tezos, Polkadot, any of the other ecosystems that would like to come on and say, hey, this is how we've worked with developers. This is how we developed apps. These are the methods and techniques that we've used. There's something that can be learned from pretty much anywhere. And it doesn't have to be a knockdown, drag-out, heated debate, even though I get a little bit feisty with people like Ethereum people on Twitter sometimes. It's all in good fun. It's just a little bit of rough and tumble horseplay, a little rough horseplay before the big game. It's always fine. At the end of the day, we can shake hands, and we can find some agreements between each other on crypto. So I'm going to be wrapping this up here. Charles, any last words for the audience or before we wrap it up here?
Well, I just want to thank the entire Cardano community, and it's really exciting to see you back on the air, Rick. When the Cardano effect came to an end, I felt like a family member had died or something. I listen to you guys every week, and I'm just always amazed at how not only when things end do we find a new beginning, the new beginning's actually better than the old thing. And so I think Cardano Live is going to be a really fun show, and I can't wait to listen to you guys every week. And I'll, of course, throw people your way. We have a lot of great things happening this month, and as I mentioned, next month is going to be a brutal month, but a fun month, and it's going to be really cool for people to actually do live demos, real time, on the testnet and eventually mainnet for the cool stuff that they're building. So this year is our year. Cardano is waking up.
Oh, we love live demos, and great work with Cardano 360, by the way, and a huge shout out to your staff who have developed that. And thanks for coming on, Charles. I appreciate it. You have a great Friday afternoon. Everybody out there, you have a great Friday afternoon. Remember, going for number one all day, every day. Wrapping it up here.
Cheers.